Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. My name is Mpho and I am your host with Tim Delace here with me. I'm in Joburg, he's in Cape Town. Tim, how's the weather in Cape Town?
Cold, but not wet. Very cold. Um, yes, it's. I'm in a good mood because of the guest we're getting, but I still haven't recovered from last night's 2-2 draw. If I'm
Oh
honest.
man. So sitting on the other side of the team that's below you on the log, I just thought they could have killed the league last night, but they just want to keep us in. And so Liverpool fans and Arsenal fans this morning are probably not happy for different reasons. Remember, this is the Full Quota Pod. We talk all things South African cricket, domestic cricket. The One Day Cup starts this weekend, so please do go out there, support your local side. There'll be games in and around you, so please do go to CSA's website to check that out. But most importantly, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, please like and subscribe and follow us so you get notified when we have moments like this. Really, really awesome interviews. And also, please follow us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. That's our audio side as well. And then, most importantly, engage with us on X. We are on X after last night's loss. If you want to engage with us, please do send us at Full Quarter Pod on X. I'm not happy, but I will let it go because the most important thing is the Champions Trophy, and we'll talk about all of that on Monday. But for now, it is Thursday morning, and you're probably going to be watching it later tonight or listening it to later today. We've got a very exciting interview, and I think it's really important, largely because of the next tournament we're going into, and also the World Test Championship final that we're going to play. Tim was laughing at me on Monday because my team lost the Super Bowl, and largely because they weren't loose. They were tight, and it just felt like something was going on. And so we got a very important guest. I'm going to let Tim introduce him.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get him on for some time. You know that I've been rabbiting on about how important it is for the Proteas for the last 5 or 6 years. Certainly since the start of this podcast. Get a mental coach. Get a mental coach. Get a high performance coach, whatever you want to call it, and the team will improve. Yes, we haven't got a trophy, but I do think with his input, the team has improved in the World Cups that he's been a part of. He's been working across sports, so he's got a wide range of experience across the sports, which I think has been an advantage for him. So without further ado, it's the former high performance coach of the Proteas for the last World Cup, and he was also at the ILT20 recently. It's Tom Dawson Squibb.
Yeah, let's bring Tom Dawson Squibb in. Tom and I were at UCT one time. Our paths aligned, but didn't know each other. And also, he's the former Ikes coach who took a very good Ikes team. There was a lot more talent around the country to three finals, which was awesome, and that was exciting. Tom, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mpho. Thanks, Tim. Much appreciated you having me on.
So, Tom, we always like to ask our guests their journey. Normally, it'd be cricket as your career journey, but Tom, you studied organizational psychology. How did you end up getting into sports and to the point where you end up being head coach of Ikes? That would have been an interesting change from where you had started.
I'll try to do this quickly because it is quite a journey. I think, you're right. I studied at UCT. I did a Bachelor of Business Science and majoring in organizational psychology. I think when I was 15, I was a very enthusiastic cricketer, and that was when my back first packed up. The good old bowler back injury. And I, at 16, then started to umpire and coach. And I've never stopped coaching. I'm now 41. I've never really stopped coaching. I coached through university. I was a cricket coach and a rugby coach, summer and winter. And then when I left university, it was a little bit like, so what am I going to do? And I started working in the world of leadership development, change management. And I didn't really know that much about, working with big businesses, but obviously I was getting exposed to that. And then on the side, I was working with sports teams, setting goals, doing basic, building leadership groups and what have you. Started doing that work, and then got quite lucky, I suppose, in that I started working in professional rugby quite quickly. And as I was working in professional rugby, then I started to do work with cricket, rugby, hockey, water polo. In fact, I think to this day, I've worked with 18 different sports in some shape or form. That journey continued really since 2010 to what are we now, 2025. I've always had some exposure to elite sports as well as amateur sports and student or semi-professional sport. I think from a being a head coach point of view, they're very different roles. Being a head coach versus being a performance coach or mental coach, whatever you want to call it. My mental performance coaching work was working in the background. I was doing corporate work, and that not in the background, in the foreground. I was doing that work. But then I got an opportunity to also be the head coach of the UCT under 20 rugby side, because in the words of the current man in charge, it was like, we're lacking leaders. We're lacking head coaches. Lots of people might know the technical side, but not leaders. So I took that role, did that for 3 years, left, ended up getting an opportunity to go and work in Australia with the rugby union team there in Melbourne. And when I came back from that, the head coaching role at UCT happened to come up. Through some conversations, I was given that role, but then also carried on doing my performance coaching role with the Stormers and with other different people. I'm trying to make this quick, but that role lasted 5 years. I decided after 5 years that was a good number. And whilst I was still Aki's coach, I also got the opportunity to work with the Proteas. Before that, I worked with the Netherlands. So I'd done some work with Netherlands. I'd done a lot of work. I've done little bits of work in the 100, the IPL, the Mzansi Super League when that was around.
We remember that.
Yeah, some little bits of stuff with the Cobras and the Warriors over the years. Very little bitty stuff. But I suppose that's how things grew. I've got a fantastic relationship with Gary Kirsten and Ryan Cook through their academy, Gary's academy here in Cape Town. And you sort of work with, so Gary and I become close, Ryan and I become close, and subsequent to that, so have I become close with Rob Walter, Eric Simons, JP Dumini, and that's why now recently I went to the ILT20 with the Sharjah Warriors, and spent the campaign with them with JP as head coach, and yeah, so that's where we're sitting today. I'm lucky to have worked with lots and lots of different people. I still work with individual cricketers as well as and others. Hopefully that summarizes my journey of it. I'll try to do it quickly.
No, that's awesome. That covers everything. I guess a lot of people that we have on, or the majority, they're steamed in cricket. That's the job from very early on: school, college, university, club cricket, and then potentially domestic and international. Your journey, as you explained, is very, very different. Do you think a good thing for you to have that grounding across amateur and professional, across the sports, so that when you go into an elite team, you have a grounding of what is needed, rather than somebody who's playing professional cricket and just got the job and that's the way their journey has gone?
Look, it's a good question, Tim. I think you can look at it through different lenses. I think like any person that you hire into an environment, there's pros and cons to them. So I think as a performance coach, the pros are my skill doesn't need to be bat swing or being able to bowl a slower ball. My skill needs to be around the mind. My skill needs to be, yes, it helps to like admit a little bit, but that's not what people are hiring me for. They're hiring me for my ability to look at things like team dynamics, to look at things like leadership, to look at ways of thinking that can be more beneficial, habit creation that can be more beneficial for players and for coaches alike. Do I have to have played professional cricket to do that? I don't think so. And I think sometimes having someone who's a little bit from the outside means I don't get preoccupied with, field setting and other things that cricket people might get preoccupied with. I'm looking at things through my lens. So I think that's the pro. Yes, the con, and I've learned this over time, is that cricket can be quite insular, like all sports. And if you don't have a background or haven't played, then you are on the back foot, to be pardon the pun. And people might think, well, what have you done to get here and what have you? Well, I suppose that's subjective. I've been into some environments where I've been very welcomed and worked with some people who have been very welcomed and they're keen to learn from me. And then others that are less so. And that's fine. You can't fight that. So I think there are pros and cons. I suppose I have played cricket since I was 3. I have been to watch a lot of cricket over the years. I was a bit of a cricket tragic when I was young. My mum would drop me off at Newlands at age 8 and on my own, and like go and get signatures and all of that stuff. I love the game. I've coached it. I've umpired it. I've watched it. Like you guys. And then I've been lucky enough to work now across 4 different leagues and with 2 international teams plus some provincial teams. So I know that might not be enough for everyone, but I think it gives me a pretty good understanding of the game of cricket. But most importantly, I think is my craft good? Is my character, strong? Am I able to connect with human beings? Am I someone who can be trustworthy for people? Like that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important, and I'm of the school for this. I work in corporate, and a lot of the stuff is just dealing with people's mental day to day, because the work they know how to do. You work in a high skill environment, and that's you. It's just how you manage those moments, right? Moments of stress, moments of pressure. Tom, what have you discovered being in the cricket world that you haven't seen in other industry, in other sports teams? What key themes that you've seen in cricket that are different to other sporting codes? Or actually, largely as rugby. I think let's do that comparison, because a lot of people like to compare cricket and rugby. But I think what are the key themes that provide a difference in terms of the nature of the players and also how they handle different situations?
Yeah, good question, Paul. I think it's a big question. So obviously, I had a bit of a reputation working with the Proteas as a guy who comes from rugby. Because I'm coaching rugby, I've worked with the franchise teams, etc., etc. And as you know, the Springboks have done very well over the last few years. So there are a lot of comparisons. Are the Springboks this, the Springboks that? And funnily enough, I'm one of the guys who pushes back so much on that. Even though I have a background in rugby and I love rugby a lot, I believe that one must be very careful of making comparisons at many levels. So the first one is I think rugby is a emotional, physical-centric sport that requires skill. Cricket, I think, is a skill-centric sport at its core that one has to manage and understand emotion, but they're very different. Rugby is a way more interdependent sport. So if you think about it, it's very difficult to play well unless the people around you play well. Whereas cricket is, there are elements of interdependence, fielding for others, running between the wickets. But then there are elements that are quite independent. And I think understanding that and not grouping everything in the same way. So if I'm working with a cricket team and I'm working with a rugby team, I'm looking at 2 different lenses, because at its core, yes, it's nice for everyone to get on and be mates. But guys, you look at the world now, it's like you're coming in. I went to the Sharjah Warriors. We lost at 10:10. I was on a flight at 10:4. You're in and out. It's like you're not building lifelong friendships. That might happen. Great. Fantastic. But first and foremost, we have to create what I call performance connections. We have to get people to perform together and connect on that level. So I think we have to understand, so what is needed at a connectivity level in cricket and what is needed at a connectivity level in rugby. There'll be some overlap and there'll be some different things. So that's probably the first thing. I think at a macro system level, cricket and rugby are very different because cricket guys are playing for 6-7 teams a year and they're in and out, whereas rugby, the maximum you'll play for is 2. You have your franchise and you have your international side. And the peak of rugby is to play international rugby, whereas the peak of cricket, romantically and emotionally, is your international side. Financially, as we know, it's not. Certainly for certain countries like ours. So one has to be mindful of the many extraneous variables, so to speak, using a bit of an academic term, but a lot of external variables that are impacting the way cricketers are thinking about team, about their own performance, which might be very different to rugby. Those are 2 sort of major differences that I'm aware of. I think, hopefully I won't waffle on for now.
We don't mind if you
I'm
do.
glad you mentioned the connection part, though. I heard you say that in a previous podcast, and you explained it, because for me, when I think of connection, it's bye. That's connection, or it's that kind of thing. Going for a run, that kind of thing together. But your connection that you explain, because of the nature of cricket, because of the nature of playing 365 days of the year, that connection is on the field. That connection is in that moment together when you're playing together as a team, to have that connection. And I think that's important. I really do think it's important.
It's unbelievably important. I want to go into that point. It's unbelievably important. So I always say connection is the antidote to pressure, right? So we have to understand that Mpho works in private equity. You don't necessarily talk about brotherhood or being part of a family or what have you. You may have made some great friends at work, but you've made those friends because you're pursuing a common goal. You haven't gone there to make friends. You've gone there to make money and to build meaning in your work and build something special. So if you put guys to play for Mumbai, Cape Town, or for Sharjah Warriors, or for flipping Texas Super Kings, whoever it is, or for the Proteas, etc., people have got individual goals. They want to go and do well, and they want to look after their families and what have you. In order to do that, they need to perform well. In order to perform well, they have to connect, they have to feel seen, they have to feel safe psychologically. But different people are triggered by different things. So you may feel psychologically safe in one environment, whereas I might feel completely unpsychologically safe. That's the difference of human beings. So the connection piece is massive. And what I'd say, though, is just don't mistake connection with we all need to be best friends and we all need to pry together. That's not the connection that we're looking for. If that happens and you make friends and people you can have breakfast with and lunch with and feel comfortable, brilliant. For me, for Tom Dawson Squibb, that's massively important. If I'm on tour with the Proteas for 6 weeks and I walk around at breakfast and I feel like I can't sit with anyone, or I can't have a conversation and have small talk or have banter, I'm not feeling safe. I'm feeling in trouble. But that's me. Some people are quite happy to sit in their rooms and play PlayStation and, connect with one person. But we need to understand that in order for us to win competitions, there is an element of connection that needs to take place. So let me break that down even further. If I'm bowling and I bowl and I get pumped and I look around and not one person is looking at me and everyone's got the teapot out or they're staring at the ground, that could have an impact on my emotional state and therefore my ability to execute my skill. If I'm going into a competition and I'm bowling against certain batsmen, and Tim and Mpho, you guys have played with this batsman in another league, and you don't share that information with me about what might work for against this guy, we're not connecting on performance. You don't have to tell me how to bowl, but you can just share some information and say, hey, guys, I'm telling you now, when we're bowling against Baba Azam, I played with him. He doesn't like this. Great. Thanks for that information. What I choose to do that is up for me. So those little things are performance connections.
That's beautiful.
Awesome.
Unbelievably beautiful.
Cool.
Awesome. I guess my main question would be, I don't want you to give secrets away, but were those connections with the Proteas when you with them, particularly with those 2 World Cups that you were involved? Were those connections there? Did you have to create those connections? What was that experience like for you with the Proteas?
Yeah, big question. I think. Look, firstly, I probably, and I'm first to admit, I probably made a mistake in my introduction with coming into the Proteas. I came in 3 months before the World Cup. I suppose I assumed a certain mandate based on the work I'd done in a lot of other teams, and probably got that slightly wrong. Maybe tried a little bit too hard to add value, which, if I'm brutally honest, didn't come from a place of arrogance, probably came from a place of insecurity. Like, oh, geez, I better add value. Otherwise, what's the point in them paying me? But I think if I look back at it and I were to start my time at the Proteas again, and I've discussed this with a lot of players, coaches, I would have come in a lot slower and really stayed in the background a lot more and found out things. I think there are some really strong connections that exist in the Proteas over the years. You look at Aiden and Kagiso, like they've played together since they were 18. You look at Aiden and Classy, and they lived together when they were Tucks. You look at, that little batting core of De Kock, Klaasen, Miller, Markram, Bavuma. I'm probably leaving someone out, Razzle maybe to a degree. They've played together for a long time, Lungi and KG. So these connections really exist, I think, and one needs to be mindful of that. So I think in the Proteas setup, for obvious reasons that are very public, I think at times trust has been eroded a little bit, and it's had less to do with the 15 people in a squad and maybe more to do with the greater system, and that has caused ructions in the group. But I think if you go through the players there's some really deep connections and some really useful performance connections that take place. I do think they could be better, and I do think the trust could be improved. But that's the same with most environments. I don't think it's unique to the Proteas. But I do understand in this cricketing world that we live in, where you're going between teams all the time, hey, like, you've got to almost be a little bit guarded. I can understand if you think about it. You walk into bat, everything's on you. You come out, you get 3 of 10 balls in a T20. It was a disaster. Everyone's criticizing you, talking about you. It's very individual based, and you can see why elite sportsmen, and especially elite cricketers, build barriers around themselves emotionally and find safe spaces in their family or their friends or their trusted advisors, because they have to, because it can be flipping scary being part of cricket. So I really get that now, and really understand that, and can see why people keep to themselves a little bit. But going back to your point, Tim, I think there's some really strong performance connections that take place in the Proteas. I will add to that, because I'm sure you're going to ask me, the Proteas white ball side actually hasn't done that well for a while. And I think it goes back to performance connections for me. Because if you're continuously picking different teams, and if you're continuously having changes in your staff, and if you're continuously talking about we're building for the future, or we're giving opportunities or what have you, I think that erodes that cohesion. It erodes at those performance connections. People don't realize the impact that taking a Quinny de Kock out of a team actually has. The guy's a tactical genius. People don't realize the impact taking 100 Klaasen out of a batting lineup does. People don't understand the impact of KG Rabada not playing in the T20 series against India, not just for his 4 overs. But if you think about the safety that he brings to other people, the nasty that he brings to other people. If KG takes a wicket in his first over, Mpho, you're bowling at a different batter. If KG's not there, there is no wicket in the first over. You're now bowling at Tilak Varma. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, there's a knock-on effect of all these things. And I feel desperately sorry for Rob as the Proteas coach, in that if you were to say what's one thing you would do for the Proteas white ball side, I would just say, just try to get your best players playing more, South Africans love winning, talk about winning, aim to win, and you'll build more of a positive, confident narrative amongst the playing group, amongst the staff group, and amongst all stakeholders. And I think then that builds momentum. So it's a tough thing to get right with the way cricket's macro system is, but I think it's probably your biggest hindrance to performance.
Yeah, I think that's Tom. You're just giving us A+ answers. And you're speaking to who I am as a person, right? Just in general, in terms of just being able to get people around and perform in pockets. You don't have to perform as one unit as an 11, but you can perform in pockets of 3 or 4 or 2 or whatever it is, right? And individuality for me has always been the key thing. When you bring a new player into a side, what happens there? But Tom, when you mentioned earlier that performance connections helps with pressure, eases pressure. In a final situation, South Africa currently has gone through 4 finals and the one semi-final that you were at in India. And it feels as though to the layman that the pressure moments, they're just not getting it right. Even with a squad that has similar characteristics in terms of performance, connections, and time. And to a certain extent, I think I look at that that final in the US where we got to a point where we could win the game. And they were playing really well up until a point. And everyone speaks about the curse and South Africa's curse because of our things. But speak to us about how performance connections can ease the pressure going forward, right? Because we've seen teams in South Africa where in a tough spot, nobody looks at a bowler, everybody looks away. When there's a batting collapse, it feels to me like no one's saying anything in the dressing room. Just everyone's just quiet, and it speaks to that insular nature of cricket. But how does that work in a pressure situation? Does Aiden need to go talk to Kagiso? Well, what can we do?
Cool. Yeah, nice question. Look, firstly, I've only been part of 2 World Cups, so I can't speak for 99. I can't speak for 2003. I can't speak for those. And I think one must be very careful if one is in a coaching or leadership space in cricket of tarring every loss with the same brush. I always say, like, and I've read this in a book, and myself and Eric Simons talk about this all the time. Like, don't separate the problem from the solution. So we often rush to solutions without identifying like what is actually the problem. So the problem has probably been different in different worlds. Had South Africa won a World Cup in the last 5 years, would they have won the World Cup in 2024 in Barbados? Maybe, probably. I'm not sure. So because the pressure is ramped up. I think at its core, right. So when people are under pressure, we go into fight, flight, freeze mode. We know that. What that can often do for people is it takes away clarity of their thinking. So either they will overthink or they will not think at all and just almost go into like a panic mode. And we've seen that in different sports. I don't know how sport nuts you guys are, but if you think Jan Novotny, Wimbledon many years ago, Jan van der Velde, the Open, trying to hit the ball out the water. We've seen many bizarre moments under pressure. Absolutely. I see you got your hands on your face. And we've probably done it ourselves, like I remember in under 15 playing in a 6-a-side tournament, and I was the captain, and I said, I'll take the last over, and I bowled 5 great balls, but they needed 6 off the last over, of the last ball. And I thought, brilliant, easy. I'm just going to amble in, nice and calm, nice and relaxed, bowl the half track, and I got it for 6. Because I was trying to be too calm. I wasn't thinking clearly enough and following my process. So what I think is important is that human beings are made to connect. We're made to connect. And what connection allows us to do is often it helps us to gain clarity in our mind. It helps us to remain clear on that process that gives us the best chance. It helps keep us safe. Now, we know through studies in academia that psychological safety is the biggest. Google did that project Aristotle, and it talked about how psychological safety is the biggest correlator of team performance. So we want to create that safety in the space, because I think at a brain level, I always say, like, we want to get our mind out of the way of our brain. So we have an ability to hit a ball. We have an ability to bowl a ball or catch a ball. The only thing that's going to stop us do that is our mind. So we create clarity in our mind, so our mind feels still and calm and clear, and therefore we can execute our skill. So when I look at connections that happen or don't happen, I see it all the time. And afterwards, you're like, but if we'd connected in that moment, it would have made a difference. So I'll take two Proteas batters for an example. Can't remember the exact game, but it was in a bilateral series. They batted together and they had a beautiful chase. And I asked one of the guys afterwards, tell me about it. He said, no, I love batting with that guy. I said, why? He said, no, because when we bat together, we're big on fist pumps. We batted together at provincial level. We feel safe around each other. We know each other's games. We know when to say, have you thought about this option? We know when to say, I back that option. So think about it, like you're just creating safety all the time through tiny, tiny, tiny little interactions. And that is a big difference. So we go into that World Cup final against India. Let me go back. You go into the World Cup semi-final against Australia. I think we dominate 80 of 100 overs in that game.
Yes.
But the first power play, we 24 for 4 because, quite frankly, they bowled really well with 3 world-class bowlers, and you had a fielding masterclass, extraordinary masterclass from Warner and Marnus, who were stopping balls everywhere. You know, we often think about it afterwards. If you got a bit worse fielders or lazier fielders, those balls have gone through, suddenly you get momentum and it's a knock-on effect. Hey, we could have been 50 for 2. And then who knows what we might have get to. And these little things happen in cricket all the time. Then we play in that first, the first power play of the Australian innings. We're only defending, I think, 214 or something like that. And Marco admittedly says, I'm a little bit nervous. I tense up a little bit. Rohit Sharma's got he's got it on me. And boom, what are they? 70 odd for nothing. Not Rohit Sharma. The Australian openers, Warner and can't remember who opened with him. Head. Was it Head?
Yeah, Travis said yes, it was. They opened with him, yeah.
So, but then flip, we get back in the game. Keshi's bowling, Shams. I'll never get goosebumps when I think about it. You know, they're singing there, Kolkata, Shamsi, 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 and you hear it. And South Africa's in the game, and then that ball just drops short of, I can't remember who it was, but a catch on the boundary. And we did great things, but we lose the game. Could we have connected differently in the moment? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it was unlucky. Fast forward to Barbados. We go in. They get quite a big score, but gettable, but probably a little bit bigger than we would have liked to. We would have probably wanted to win the toss on that deck. So we lost the toss. So some things are going against you. You're playing against Sharma, Kohli, Akshar Patel, Rishabh Pant, Jasprit Bumrah. What's the lefty? I've got a shirt here. Hardik Pandya. Like, you're talking world, Ravi Jadeja. I'm talking like a proper. Kuldeep. So you're talking bowling options, batting options. Akshar could bat at 8 or 3. So, like, we're talking a proper side. We've got to the final. Brilliant. We've beaten West Indies at home with all their power players. We've beaten, I don't remember Afghanistan. We got a bit lucky in that.
That was a massive game.
Not a bad side. You look at how many players are now playing around the world in the franchise leagues. We did really well. So now we're excited we get there. We don't start too well. I'm very lucky. I'm sitting next to Classy and Miller, and I'm listening to their conversations, and I'm involved in the conversations. And I won't share what we said, but there's connection happening all the time. Classy goes in and he brings us back. Now we get into this brilliant moment. And how have South Africa lost so many big games in the past? They've got tentative.
Yes.
And we didn't. We were going. Classy's going. And I got asked in a Q&A, Classy played a shot that would get him dropped from the under 12Bs. I said, I'm not sure about that. Because he's trying to hit it through extra. He's on 70 of nothing. Off Hardik Pandya, he's got a slow ball. It's bounced ever so slightly. He's nicked off. He's out. Like, yes, we would say he should have finished off, and he would love to have finished it off. But he was playing with aggressive intent, and that's been what Robin and JB and these guys have been trying so hard to do, is to get the Proteas to play with aggressive intent, because that's the way the world's going. And then, of course, you have the perfect storm where, Marco's coming in at 7. A lot of people would say, in that moment, was that one too high? Well, Marco comes in at 7, Kesha comes in at 8, and you've got the best seam bowler in the world bowling at you. And there's maybe a little bit of tightening up, but also some great balls, and then it snowballs. And then Dave Miller who's one of the world's best finishers, misses it by this much. And you have to feel that if that ball goes for 6, and you can always say if that ball goes for 6, we probably win the game, and we're having a very different conversation here. And that little jersey behind me there's probably got a medal with it. And that's the fine margin. So when people say, did the Proteas choke? I say, if you want to say the Proteas choked, they choked. It actually is not interesting for me as to whether they choked or not. I'd far rather go into the detail of it and far rather look at, okay, well, what did we do? And did we stand by our principles of batting with real intent? Did we stand by our principles of under pressure, we want to connect? And if you evaluate those and see where you can do better, then I think you can get better. And I have no issue with people saying the Proteas choked. That's cool. It actually doesn't bother me at all. And I don't know if it bothers the players, to be honest with you. But I'm absolutely convinced the only way the Proteas will win big tournaments is through performance connections. And that's at staff level, at player level, at systemic level, like CSA and players, and improving those connections across the board. That's how we'll win it. And then select your best team as much as you can.
Wow.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Yeah, that's I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think what you said at the end, I think that is important. And I think you're right. I think to a large extent, if we are going to get that gold medal from that World Cup, that is the way it's going to have to happen. Particularly with resources of the top 3, that in terms of resources, we're not in a position to challenge. But because of what the talent we have, there's no way we can't win the World Cup. One thing that you did touch on, though, for me early on in your response was clear mind. How different is it for you now, and how challenging is it for you knowing the fact that there are going to be players that don't necessarily have that clear mind, i.e. things like social media? It's very clear that there are, I'm not going to mention their names, but they're very clear that there are a couple of players within the Proteas setup. They lose a game, they go to social media. Because they post something. And you can tell whether it's in whatever way that is affecting them. It might not be affecting them on the field, but it is affecting their mind in some way or other. How challenging is it for you in your job to clear that mind, to show them that there is a difference between performance at the field and what happens on social media? What's said by somebody who doesn't have a profile picture, who probably isn't a real person, and despite the fact that it's a vile comment, that's not real. What's happening at the field is real. So how challenging is that for you in your position as a performance coach to separate those two for the player?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about some of the comments they get. I've seen, some players have shown me stuff that they get commented on the Instagram and stuff. It's wild. I can't actually believe human beings can think like that. But firstly, I think I'm not clearing anyone's mind. A person is clearing their own mind. My role can be to listen, to support, to ask questions, to help them reframe. But ultimately, the player is doing what the player, he or she, needs to do to clear their own mind. I think it is very difficult for any coach, whether it's performance coach or the head coach or any coach, to help players manage external noise. Because if you think about a player, he or she will have their agent, they'll have their family, they'll have their friends, they'll have their schoolboy coach, they'll have their other coach from another franchise, all giving input and advice. And one of the things that you see in cricket, and probably in most elite sports, is a lot of people have got opinions, and there's lots of opinions. Not negative, not bad, nothing like that. But people have opinions, and people want to help. So if I coached you, Mpho, at Stellenbosch or at UCT, and now you've gone on to play for Province or for Boland, and I notice something, I might send you a very innocent message going, hey, cool. And now, but your Boland coach is going, I want you to do this. And then I'm going, but I want you to do that. So all of these things, the social media stuff is obvious. Like, it's people being vile. I actually think one of the hardest things is people who have got good intent. And it's like, even players listen to each other a lot, which is great, but it's also not. It's like players listen to coaches, which is great, but it's also not. It's like anything. There's good and there's bad to things. So then they hear, geez, but Classy hits spin like this. Okay, well, I'm going to try and do this. But Tim, you his coach, and you going, well, you're not Classy, play like this. Now the guy's conflicted in his mind. So I think, my work with players is to try and filter a lot of what they hear, try and understand where it's coming from, but then build their own formula, build their own recipe, and take confidence in their own recipe. Because my insights have now been that players take a lot from each other, and they actually are deeply curious. Even though sometimes it's not cool to be too curious, I think they are deeply curious, and they want to know and they want to hear, mostly from people who've played the game. The benefit of that is people who've played the game. The downside of that is that often people who've played the game will tell you what they did. And that bias doesn't necessarily help. So say, take me, for example. Paddy Upton has done a lot of what I'm doing in his world. I'm sure you know of Paddy. But I can't be Paddy.
Yes,
I can't be Paddy. I can listen to Paddy and take his thoughts and have him ask me questions and what have you, but I can't try to be Paddy. But now Paddy might say some things to me. Now I go and I'm thinking, and I'll give you a prime example. Paddy and I shared a stage once at a conference, and he spoke before me, and he spoke, and then I spoke afterwards, and we flew back together. So we were at the airport having a coffee or whatever, and I said to him, can you give me some feedback? And he gave me feedback, really useful. And basically, I was flustered by Paddy. I was flustered by the fact that he was flipping good. He went before me. I was now the last talk speaker of the day, and I was like, flip, he's good. And I performed. I gave my talk in a suboptimal way. He gave me feedback, what have you. The next time we went and did it, Paddy spoke before me because we were in different centers. And we flew back afterwards, and I said, and he was like, no, you were infinitely better. Now, that little performance connection that Paddy and I had was great, but I didn't try and be Paddy, and I didn't get flustered by Paddy. So there was a bit of self-awareness around me, and when I'm at my best, and then I could commit to that. And that's what we want players to do.
Well, that's really very interesting. I know Tiger Woods, whenever he was told he was told to do something, or change the swing thought or something, he would take 3 balls, he'd try it. If it didn't work, he'd leave it. That was like one of the more elite ways of cutting stuff out.
Cool.
I think my final question, from just taking some of the performance connections onto tactical things, right? So when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, okay, fine. Is there a way to assemble the fielding side or the field in such a way that you have pods, right, where guys are helping each other out? If a bowler is comfortable with a Kagiso, you put Kagiso at mid-on, and I've seen a lot of that happen in the Proteas recently. But also from a batting perspective, is there a way to work in pods? I know the Springboks also work in some sort of a pod system, but that's obviously on the field, but that's for them. But like from a Proteas perspective, from a batting lineup perspective, obviously put people in the best positions, but aligning people with people who have a performance connection with them, just so that it creates that, like, to the whole point of, I love batting with this guy because it's so great. So a Classy and a Miller, because they have that connection, but like to keep the pods going and to also allow youngsters to come in and have a sense of safety. Because my only thing is just about, I know you spoke about the changing of the teams, and I get that, but is there a way that cricket can do that a lot more leaner, just to work on, to get the best mental side, will get the side in the best mental space, especially in tough moments?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not a cricket coach, and I think if you sat here with a Rob or Brendan McCullum or, these guys would have views on it. My view from my lens would be absolutely. We are impacted by people around us. So I would definitely try and find ways, think about it at a basic level, left hand, right hand. That's a combination that helps, because now, there's definitely, you've got short sides of boundaries and all that kind of stuff. So left hand, right hand, great, great, could work in certain things. Then you might say, maybe a more old school way of thinking, but someone who's a bit of a knocker around with someone who's a bit more aggressive. Absolutely. Or at a character level, you don't want someone who's a bit of a negative Nancy with someone who wants their tires pumped and all of that kind of stuff. So I would definitely look at it. I think connections are everything. That doesn't mean individual skill is irrelevant, but individual skill is why they've been selected. We then have to make the individual skill come out. How do we make the individual skill come out? We create role clarity. We get them feeling part and connected with a team, and we get them to connect with each other. I call it the triple connection. Connect with purpose, connect with your role, and connect with each other. And I would try and maximize that as best as I could in any cricket team through the way that we configure, create pods, if you want to call it that. Definitely.
Awesome. Last one for me is, from my sense, and I know I said it when I introduced you, I've always wanted the Proteas to have a performance coach. And from my sense, I can see an improvement. Yes, we haven't got the World Cup, but I can see an improvement. I don't think we win the white ball series against Australia 2-0 down. I don't think we win that if you're not there. I don't think we beat Nepal in the T20 World Cup in the situation that we're in. I can see in the tight moments there is an improvement. Like I can visibly see that. And maybe somebody will say it's the team, and you'll say that, and that's fair enough. I'm happy with that. My question would be will you be working with them for the World Test Championship? Will you be going over for that final? Or if you've got other stuff on the go, what's on the future for you?
Thank you. I'm not sure. I think it's a collective effort, to be honest. If I played a role in some players or with the staff, which is where I did a lot of my work, or the coaching group, great. I appreciate that. But I wouldn't take credit for beating Nepal or coming back 3-2 in a series. Like I wouldn't take responsibility, I suppose, for losing a game. We're all little cogs in the bigger wheel. So I appreciate that. But I'm not convinced. I think it's very difficult to infer causality. In terms of me going forward, no, I've never been to the test team. I've only ever been to the white ball team. So I definitely won't be. I'm going to go to London. I'm probably going to sit in the stands and watch.
I'll see you there, Tom.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm going to have a couple of beers and enjoy the game. But I won't be working with a team. And yeah, at this stage, I am available to any players or coaches who want to have conversations with me, externally. I will be having conversations with Rob Walter over the next few weeks, but very much remote. I won't be part of the team. I have amazing relationships with quite a number of guys who have been part of the team. I said to someone the other day, it was very cool to, I know it's going to sound very random, but to get invited to Bryce by a couple of players. One player said to me, "You want to go for dinner?" And I said, "Yeah, cool, let's go for dinner." He's like, "Yeah, I don't feel comfortable asking any other coaches. So I asked you." Those are all nice little things that you realize, hey, like I'm building connections with people. So of course I'm disappointed not to still be with the Proteas, but I understand the circumstances, and it's cool. It offers me opportunities to go do things like the ILT20. I'm off to Scotland next week to go work with the rugby team there, and let's see what the future holds. But yeah, I've got such cool relationships with certain people in the Proteas side, and I'm sure we'll keep in touch when the need arises.
Sure, Tom. Yeah, look, Tom, this past 50 minutes that we spent with you has been enlightening and amazing and can be applied to all sorts. And so I want to say thank you very much for your time and wish you all the best in the future. I know you've got a book out, Human Ball, which I am going to read because as an Ike Tigers fan at heart, we want to see how well what the secrets underneath that those 3 amazing years. Yes, yes,
Here we
Human
are.
Ball.
That's good.
Um,
I,
oh, oh,
Human Ball was a really cool project to put together. Basically, at the end of coaching UCT
mm,
and being in the head coach, I felt like we'd got so close to winning, but we hadn't, and I didn't want the story to die of
mm,
really, trying to get the best out of people, and the enjoyment and the tough times. And the book kind of morphed into a little bit more than just telling that story, but also telling the story of performance and maximizing people like Bazball with their style or Moneyball with money.
mm.
We needed to
Oh,
get the
with the
best
A's.
resources. So,
Okay.
yeah, please let people go and read Human Ball. You'll enjoy it.
Yes, please go get it. But Tom, thank you very much. It's been great, and we wish you all the best with your future endeavors. And hopefully, we can get you on when we win, and you can tell us the performance connections really works. I believe it does. I'm gonna apply it in my context here, at work. I think it's awesome, and we will do that the same.
Yeah,
Thank you
I'll be
very much.
supporting. I'll be supporting them as much as you guys will over the next few weeks in the Champions Trophy.
Yes, thank you very much, Tom. Cheers. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
guys. Nice
Thanks,
day.
thanks,
Bye.
Tom.
Thanks for
Bye.
having me.
Sure. Cool, Tim. Thank you for that. That was amazing. Yeah, we have great interviews like that, and one of the ways which you can support us is to ensure that we keep doing this, and to help us with this passion project of ours is buy some coffee at fullquotapod.co.com, buymecoffee.com/fullquotapod. Tim, we've got to run. Monday we'll be back talking Champions Trophy, talking performance connections, talking One Day Cup, and seeing which team has more performance connections in the One Day Cup coming through. But thank you very much for organizing that.
No worries, no worries. Something I wanted to do for a long time, and I'm delighted that Tom came on and gave us a very interesting chat. I can't think of any better wording, but it was a very interesting conversation. And hopefully, as you said, we'll have him on once we have won a World Cup.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone will be back on Monday. Please do check us out on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Check us out on X at Full Quarter Pod and also Apple Podcasts and Spotify. For myself, Tim, and myself, it's goodbye and lesale. Kakahiso.